We discussed last time that it's already very difficult to make some decisions when it's only about us, when it's only up to us to make some decision. It's already very difficult. We are rarely rational. We have millions of years of evolution behind our backs that equipped us. We have emotions, we have cognitive biases, and yeah, all of this stuff. And now let's take it up one level and let's take all those irrational, biased, emotion-driven people. Let's lock them together in one room and let's have them rationally decide who talks next and whose ideas we select and who gets blamed for stuff when things go wrong and what can go wrong.
Yeah, it's a real test of everybody's individual self-management, isn't it? Like just go into a room there with those people you work with and just make a decision. You know, what could go wrong?
Easy peasy. What angle should we? I feel like selecting some villains maybe. Like what are the things, the mechanisms, the something that makes it so difficult to actually make a decision as a group,
Yeah,
even more
that's a good way
difficult
of
than as a
asking the
single.
question. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what are the why is it so difficult to make a decision as a group? And I can relate to this because I'm planning a trip with a group of friends at the moment. Have you ever done that? Oh my
Uh,
God. Try making decisions with your friends.
I'm thinking. So there's a lot of stuff written about groupthink,
Hmm.
and maybe that can be conversation starter. I think that groupthink is like a collective term for a lot of things that can go wrong for us. Um, and yeah, I'll just keep blabbling about this. Let's see if that's the angle. So we have the herd mentality. We like to follow groups of people. If a group is going in some direction, we just go in the same direction. We have a consensus trap where no one is really speaking up, and like the agreement overrides critical thinking. We have all the biases related to hierarchy. So yeah, it must make sense because let's just listen to that very important person in the room. A lot of things that can go wrong related to this idea that it's a group, and a lot of good examples, a lot of examples where it did go wrong because of groupthink. Probably the very famous one is the Challenger, right? The, I don't remember exactly the details, but I just remember that it's well known that there was a person that had some information related to this idea that some part of this rocket will not work in low temperatures, and it was called on that day, but the deadline was set. Everyone agreed that it's a good idea to launch the rocket on that day, and one person was overruled, more or less. I even remember reading some interviews with that person, and I'm sure we will paste the person's name somewhere below, unless you remember. And he was saying that it was just impossible in those meetings to raise a concern like this. It's too important to make that happen. You just can't stop it. And in results, 7 people died. So yeah, groupthink at work.
Yeah, and I think this is where some of the, you hear people talking about safety in the context of working in a remote team or a software development team or a product development team. A lot of it comes from that. It should be okay to speak up. It should be okay to stop the train, pull the cord on the production line, the and-on idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but in the context of um, so I think we've talked before about the groupthink experiment. I think it's called the Asch experiment,
Mhm.
where you have So you have a few people. One is a volunteer, and the others are um, working with the experimenter, right? So they're not marks, right? There's a mark, right, which is a bad word to use. And the game is the experimenter holds up a card with three lines and asks the first person which line is the longest, and the first person gives an incorrect answer. Then the second person agrees with the first person, and the third person, who is the subject of the experiment, decides, do I go with the group or do I tell them they're both wrong? And this experiment showed that in a lot of situations like this, people tend to go with the group rather than buck
Yeah,
the trend. Like there's social reasons, maintaining status quo, not wanting to stand out, and maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe I'm looking at the card wrong. Maybe these other people are right. The guy in the white coat is accepting their answers. There's lots of strange logic you can use to justify a bad decision, right? And there's lots and lots of them. I think Kahneman, we talked about Kahneman last time, and Kahneman referred to that. Um, so yeah, there's lots of ways irrationality, emotion can interfere with the decision in a group because we're social people.
yeah,
And fight or flight, we're probably afraid of making a bad decision. I think fear is one of the emotions that's possible. And if I look at my Junto wheel to try and articulate which type of fear, huh? Right? We've got, are we scared, terrified? Probably not terrified. Insecure. Do we know if we're actually able to make this decision ourselves? Do we have to go talk to someone else? That's a big factor, right?
yeah. And all the things related to this idea. Mm, should I speak up now? Uh, Maybe I'm wrong and they are right.
Yeah.
They are very experienced people. It's also something that resonates with me well because for some time in my career, when I was entering a new team, new room, new conversations, new group, it's like I don't really get it, but I bet they do. I bet they know what they're doing.
Mm,
And it's funny because very often they don't. It's like everyone is improvising. And it's nice to say, don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, but then no one really likes to look stupid in front of other people. So,
absolutely not. Nobody does. Yeah. And I'd agree with that. Like, I think there's a couple of things I learned early on from working in offices when we used to be full time. And it's like confidence counts for a lot. It counts for an
yes,
awful lot. And people can mistake confidence for certainty. They're
or
not the same
competence.
thing. Yeah, they're not the same thing. Like just because you're confident doesn't mean you're correct. It just means you're, come on, let's go this way, you know? And yeah, there's I think it's been debunked, but I used to enjoy the Dunning-Kruger idea that when you know a little about something, you're kind of dangerous because you're more certain about it. And the more you learn, the more you realize, oh, actually, I probably need to do a bit more research before I,
Yeah,
speak up. And my husband's a medic, and in medicine, you can have the same thing. You can have this idea of safety, decision making, and confidence that might be misplaced as well. And the stakes are different there.
yeah.
But it's the same ideas, I think.
And I agree that confidence is a super interesting trait.
Hmm.
It's something very valuable to learn how to look confident, because very often that's actually related to this emotional level of making decisions or whom to follow in a conversation where you try to, for example, sell your idea. Like
Hmm.
I think it's a good idea to let's do a workshop. And why are you sure that this is a good idea? It's like already when you say it, the way you say it, the way you argument that it's a good idea. It's already very much related to how likely the group is to follow that proposal or not. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is,
It's
and like understanding the context you're in is a big part of that, isn't it? Like relationships with the people you're
yeah,
making the decision with, like what, there's that disc model. How do I communicate with people who don't communicate the same way I do? So this idea of red, blue, green, yellow,
yeah,
this one. So if I'm not red, right? Red is like a salesperson, high energy, they want data, they want emotional content. They don't want to have their time wasted. So I've got to get my energy up if I'm talking to those people. I got to use gestures and really be excited, even if I'm not. And that's kind of like playing a role a little bit.
yeah,
But you can do that in authentic ways as well. You don't have to be fake about it. And I think there's an element sometimes of role play in effective communication, and that helps people make decisions. It's like, the red people would look at me and say, I don't know if I like all this analysis. It's kind of dull. Like, why should I get behind this? Like, give me a reason to be interested in this, whereas the blue analytical people are like, oh, there's a lot of data backing this up. It's probably good. I'm going to go with it. So we have different people who like communicating in different ways, trying to decide together. Um, doesn't make it easier. So that might be another thing that makes it harder. Um, so
yeah,
I mean, I know you and I talk about facilitation sometimes as well. So I think effective facilitation is a bit of a step towards doing this better, doing it differently. But the facilitator and the people involved probably
yeah.
need more tools than just, hey, it's going to be facilitated now.
I
Um,
I think it's in my head it's even one step before, in a sense of it. I was reading a lot some time ago about the psychological safety and the idea in, was it Fearless Organization? Amy Edmondson, I
yes.
believe it was the author, and Teaming was her another book. And it's not something necessarily that starts in the workshop itself. Very often people step into the room and they already have some level of safety. They very often know how the workshop or meeting will unfold. They already know, especially if there is a very personality in the room that dictates how things should unfold. And you very often can't build that psychological safety only in the workshop. But I agree, yes, facilitation is can mean a lot. And there are some different tools that you can use. Should we talk about this? What do you think?
Yeah, and I absolutely would like to, and I think you're right. Facilitation starts and decision making starts before, like if you're organizing something where a decision will be made, canvassing begins. As soon as people are aware that there's a decision, canvassing will start, and the system will figure out who needs to talk to who. But I think there's things you can be aware of as the facilitator. Even how the decision is made, sometimes there'll be dissent and disagreement over that.
Mhm.
Like if one person feels like they have the authority to
Yeah,
say this is how it's going to happen, that can lead to, well, why do you think you have authority? And like that's not an easy question to ask. It creates a lot of emotional content in the conversation, but it may be true, you know. So like I don't want to suggest that just because it's facilitated, it's going to be like, hey, everybody, we're all going to listen to each other and then we're going to come to consensus. No, there's different ways of making decisions.
yeah.
And I think Jimmy Janlin has a really good source or good reference on it. He's got a book on that kind of thing. Um, different
There's
ways of making decisions.
there's also the Jürgen Appel's Unfix website and model, and he collects a lot of different decision-making ideas there. And I guess what you just said is the main point for me, at least, that it's not that consensus is always the best way, or the only way. And it's great when you enter a room to make a decision as a group to understand what type of authority everyone has. Is it a group decision? Is it like the group informs the decider and the
Yeah.
decider makes the decision? The decider gathers information and then says that is my decision basically. And do you need a consensus? To what extent? Do you
Mm.
allow one person to veto, like say no, no, we're not doing it, or is it not allowed, or the decision is made even if there are some people who are strongly against? I think it's great to be clear about this delegation level. Maybe that's also like just this morning we were discussing delegation poker from management 3.0, and
Mm.
it's somewhere in this space perhaps.
Yeah, and I wonder how open, it's not something I've done frequently, but how open would different groups be to actually discussing how a decision gets made?
Yeah,
It might be an uncomfortable thing to discuss, but like I'm thinking in the context of, for example, the tools we use, and I always come back to tools as well, don't I? But the organization will say, okay, everyone, we're using Jira. And everybody goes, I want to use this funky thing that I've downloaded from, GitHub. And it's like, well, you can't. Like, it's the organization has legitimate authority here. Like, there's reasons why we have kind of common things like this. Or it's like saying I don't want to use Outlook. I want to use a different email application. It's like,
yeah,
well, you kind of can't. Like, um, and at a certain point, not everything is about uh, consensus or voting. Um, so that may be an uncomfortable truth, and we may want to change that in some cases. But being
yeah,
aware, like, how does architectural review happen? How does, the team decide that we finished refinement and we're going to start working on this now? These kinds of questions, like how does something move from one state to the next? It's not always crystal clear. Like, and you hear things like, "Oh, there should be an owner," or you hear things like, "Well, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission." And we all sort of work around all this interpersonal decision making.
yeah.
But I wonder, is there a way to make it more explicit somehow?
I think it's also very important to have for bigger decisions, bigger than where we're gonna eat lunch together.
Mm,
For bigger decisions, it's great to have decision hygiene in a sense of understanding why this decision is being made. It links me to the books from Annie Duke about
mm,
thinking in bets, and very often decisions are taken, like all the decisions are taken based on some information. And very often we don't have all the information. Like, all right, maybe we even never have all the information. And it's just a bet that we're placing. Like, this is the decision we're making because we think this is true. And because we think that this will happen.
mm,
And it's for more important decisions, it's great to be clear about this. This is what I'm basing my decision on. This is what I think will happen, because it gives you this possibility to look at it again when things don't go according to the plan. Uh, this is looping back to this idea that maybe the decision was right, but the outcome is bad. Maybe you have taken the best decision possible under the knowledge, under the circumstances that you had, and you still had bad luck or whatever. And it's good to have it written down. And it's not about writing down decision like where do we eat lunch, but for more important stuff, I think it's good practice to make it visible for yourself, for everyone.
mm. Yeah, and I think where I see this or where I'm imagining this would be in, like, I'm going to take the architectural review, right? So let's say an architect says, I want to be involved early in work. I want to be able to see what's happening, and I want to be able to say that one needs an architect involved. So I'm thinking, well, how does that decision happen? Like, how much information needs to come the architect's way, and when do we say, we probably don't need to send this one to the architect? And this isn't something that just happens by accident. We'll probably make a few mistakes along the way, and
Hmm.
you know, um, but is there a place for this in like a is there a place for this in like a in Kanban somewhere, in like the workflow, the pull policy, that kind of thing?
Hmm.
That's a way to make policies explicit. I mean, are we
Yeah,
thinking of decisions fitting there as well?
yeah.
I think it could
I
could be, but
I'm also thinking, looping back to the beginning of groupthink. Uh, it's something that I see as important, the constructive dissent, in the sense of encouraging people to
mm,
voice their diverse viewpoints.
yeah,
It's like my role as a person facilitating the decision making is often in this space of asking curious questions. Are you missing something? Is there anything that you see that is not being voiced? Is there any other way to do it? It's like maybe it's this in this area of being devil's advocate or supporting people who might have some concerns, but for different reasons they're afraid of voicing them. I think it's a great again that works for more important decisions,
mm,
not those super small ones, but there's this practice of red teaming, uh, or this idea that you create different teams, you give different roles to people. Like right now, your role is to, uh, disagree with this approach. Maybe you support this. Maybe that's even your idea. But now play a role of a person that disagrees with it and find, uh, all the different reasons why it might fail or whatever. But it's like
mm.
giving people different roles to play. There's even this six thinking hats, was it? In the
Edward de
Bono?
Bono. Yeah,
Yeah,
I never
yeah,
read that,
yeah.
but people say black hat and green hat and red hat and all that.
No, I did it
Yeah,
once, long time ago, but it was fun.
yeah, and that way of thinking. I mean, so Jeff Patton has the opportunity canvas, which I like, and it's like he's kind of funny. He says like, we all think we have good ideas, but actually most of our ideas are pretty crappy. So, the combination of these two beliefs can result in a lot of crappy work starting. So really we need something a bit rigid and a bit structured to test our ideas. And that's why he sort of says this canvas says follow its steps 1 to 9, and you might find reasons why your idea is crappy, and maybe you'll throw it away before you start. And to me, that's what a Kanban system is for as well. It's actually not for moving things from left to right. It's for dumping the wrong things, filtering out the wrong things. Like to me, that's a measure of we're more efficient, right? We've thrown
Yeah,
away things that aren't right for us. Um, and to me, that's like discovering the bias, discovering the bad decision, or uncovering the flaw or the assumption in our decision making, which red teaming sounds like it's designed to do as well. Because we're another bias is optimism, right?
yeah,
So prevalent in the work. Like we don't really know, but yeah, we can probably do it. Yeah, like you haven't managed to finish something like this before. No, I know, but that was different. This is now, you know. Um, and we're all predisposed to that. And if you're the pessimistic one, people are like, "Oh, don't be so negative. Come on, we'll get it done." Um, so yeah, I like the idea of red teaming or finding way like Triz as well. That you look
yeah,
into the future, this thing didn't work. Why? Okay, it didn't work because we didn't really get behind it and we didn't really support it. Okay, good reason. So what could we do about that? I suppose we could be a bit more positive about the idea. Yeah, all right, great. Let's do that then. Um, and that's Triz in like 5 seconds, but yeah, I like that idea. Testing our assumptions, filtering out the crappy decisions, to quote Jeff Patton in a bad way.